Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down my top 5 defenses to stream for week number 6 of the 2024 fantasy football season, plus 2 additional honorable mention defenses for the week. It is important to note that there are 4 teams on bye in week number 6: the Kansas City Chiefs, the Los Angeles Rams, the Miami Dolphins, and the cold-like Minnesota Vikings. So before we could get on into things here, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my top 5 defenses to stream for week number 6 of the 2024 fantasy football season, plus 2 honorable mentions. We begin with the number 1 defense to stream for week number 6 of the 2024 fantasy football season, and that is the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Cleveland Browns at home in Philadelphia this week. The Eagles defense is currently rostered in 30% of leagues on Yahoo, 18.1% on NFL, and 9.8% on ESPN. Now, when it comes to streaming the Eagles defense, we are not streaming them because they are an elite defense. Now, we know that the Vic Fangio system takes some time to actually come to fruition, right? It's not like week 1 with a new defensive coordinator, the Philadelphia Eagles defense is going to magically become one of the best defenses in the NFL. We are now entering into week number 6, and they're still figuring things out. Overall, though, the Philadelphia Eagles defense isn't the best in terms of roster construction, but the reason why we're streaming the Philadelphia Eagles is because they are playing up against the Cleveland Browns, and frankly, the Cleveland Browns look like straight up trash at this point in the season. It seems like the head coach, the front office, everyone is sick and tired of Deshaun Watson. Now, frankly, it's hard to feel bad for the Cleveland Browns organization. It's easy to feel bad for the fans because they had Baker Mayfield. They tossed him aside. They said, I don't want to play with you anymore. They bring in Deshaun Watson. They give him a fat contract, and Deshaun Watson has not lived up to expectations one bit. And frankly, I do not believe that Deshaun Watson has that former version of himself inside of him anymore. I frankly just do not believe that Deshaun Watson is magically going to wake up to play up against the Philadelphia Eagles, hop into the time machine like his name was Marty McFly, and play like vintage Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson is a shell of himself, and that is going to lead to the Philadelphia Eagles defense being all over him like white on rice. I expect, again, I'm not going to sit here and glaze the Philadelphia Eagles defense or pretend like they have this amazing defense, but even the worst of defenses can succeed up against the Cleveland Browns because Deshaun Watson looks lost. He looks in need of a map, and I think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to have the keys to success here, and they are going to be able to demolish the Cleveland Browns offense. Now, the Eagles were on bye back in week number 5 last week, so we got to go ahead and go back to week number 4 for their defensive stats. In week number 4, they went up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa, and the Eagles defense got their clock cleaned. They lose 16-33, 2 sacks and 33 points allowed. Again, the Vic Fangio defense takes some time to actually come to fruition, and again, we don't need the 85 Bears to beat the Cleveland Browns because, frankly, Deshaun Watson just doesn't have it anymore. I honestly think if you built a wall in front of Deshaun Watson, you gave him the best offensive line of all time, you brought in prime Calvin Johnson, prime Randy Moss, Chad Ochocinco, whichever NFL wide receivers, pre-Vontaze Burfict, Antonio Brown, whichever NFL wide receivers you think are the best. You trade for Devontae Adams, right? I don't think anything is saving Deshaun Watson because he just doesn't have it anymore. There are times that he throws the ball that it is almost shocking that the ball even traveled that little of distance. Like, I've made this joke a bunch of times this season, so sorry to sound like a broken record, but the dude is legitimately bounce passing the ball to Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy like his name was Jason Kidd. Now, the Commanders' defense is way better than the Eagles' defense, but they played up against the Browns last week. They won 34-3, 7 sacks, 1 fumble recovery, and 13 points allowed. While I certainly am not going to sit here and pretend like the Eagles have an elite defense, going up against Deshaun Watson is going to be light work. The Eagles play up against the Giants in week number 7, which means that they are playable. But if the Giants offense keeps humming like they are, shout out to Brian Daboll, then maybe they're not the greatest proposition in week number 7. Next up, we move to the Houston Texans going up against the New England Patriots in Foxborough. The Texans defense is currently rostered in 41% of leagues on Yahoo, 18% on NFL, and 21% on ESPN. Now, to me, there is a little bit of a drop-off between the Eagles and the Texans defense, just because the Texans defense definitely has looked less than ideal this season, despite the fact that I think that their head coach, DeMeco Ryan, is a very smart, defensive-minded head coach. Things haven't gone the best for the Texans, but there is always the light at the end of the tunnel, and that light is Jacoby Brissett, because once the Patriots end up going to Draco May, whenever they end up making that decision, I don't necessarily believe the offense will do a full 180 and they'll go out there looking like the Kansas City Chiefs over the last couple of years, right? Like they'll look like some formidable offense that strikes fear into the eyes of defenses. But frankly, right now, the Patriots offense is dead on arrival. They are completely and utterly limp dick. They have whiskey dick, and the only way to fix it is putting Drake May in there because it just doesn't look good. The Texans defense in week 5 up against the Buffalo Bills, they played good, right? Because Josh Allen and that offense really weren't able to move the ball until late on in the game, and then Josh Allen gets the concussion. He's magically cleared to play because that makes sense, right? He's Josh Allen. He's a superstar, so he gets to come back in the game, right, guys? That makes sense. The Texans win 23-20, 1 sack and 20 points allowed. But again, it's not really about how good the Texans defense are. It's not about doing tricks on the Texans defense like your name was Sean White. It is all about the defense. It's all about the boom. Shout out the Costco guys. And I really love this matchup here up against that Patriots offense. The Dolphins defense in week 5 in Foxborough, they win 15-10, 2 sacks and 10 points allowed. The Texans are at Green Bay in week number 7. So you're going to want to run for the hills like your name was Forrest Gump. So you definitely don't want to be playing the Texans up against the Packers offense, even if the Packers offense definitely didn't look as good as we thought they would this week. Or the Packers offense, I should say, didn't look as good as we thought they would last week up against the LA Rams. So again, the philosophy here in streaming the Texans is streaming against Jacoby Brissett. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that Jacoby Brissett frankly just isn't very good. The guy is getting plowed behind the offensive line constantly, like his name was Mia Malkova, and the offensive line is basically a turnstile. So I love the upside of the Texans defense here, even if the Texans defense hasn't been the best. Next up, we move to defense to stream number 3, and this is where you start to really kind of feel the fall off. Now, I like the Colts defense, another defense that isn't really on the top of the charts back in your hearts as like a top 5, top 10 defense in the NFL, but they are competent and they're going up against the Titans in Tennessee. Now, this play could be so much better if Will Levis starts. Now, maybe they go with Mason Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer, because Mason Rudolph has played way better than Will Levis has all season. Mason Rudolph doesn't make any stupid plays. Mason Rudolph doesn't do the stupid shit that Will Levis does that leads to the funniest pictures happening every single week. There was one where bro was on his knees like his name was Violet Myers after he threw an interception. There is the one where after he got hurt, which is sad because, you know, I don't like making fun of of injuries personally, but he's on the bench and he looks like he's damn near crying. He's like, my fucking shoulder hurts. And it's just a funny picture. Again, I'm not making fun of his injury. It's just the way his face looks, and that is a tough look. Will Levis, frankly, I think every once in a while you're going to get that crazy game, that Josh Allen game, because he is Team Moo Josh Allen. He is discount Walmart Josh at Walmart Josh Allen, but he's really just great for throwing a bunch of interceptions and great for just doing stupid shit, because instead of taking the sack to the face, shout out Tabes, he doesn't do that, and he ends up just trying to throw stupid passes. 7.1% roster on NFL, 10.7% on ESPN. So again, the Colts defense pretty meh, but the Titans offense really isn't all that great either. The Colts defense week 5 up against the Jaguars in Jacksonville. They got bukaked in this game. They lose 34-37. Cool Joe Flacco almost brought him back though. 1 INT, 1 fumble recovery, and 37 points allowed. The Titans were on bye back in week number 5, so their most recent game was up against the Dolphins in week 4. On a luxurious Monday Night Football, Tyler Huntley versus Mason Rudolph. The Dolphins defense loses 12-31, 1 sack, 1 INT, and 29 points allowed. Again, a theme of today's video, talking about defenses that aren't really the best, that are playing up against offenses that we want to be attacking. So going up against the Titans, while if they go with Mason Rudolph, it's not as ideal, I still think the Colts defense can get it done. And if you are feeling frisky, this defense is also startable in week 7 against the Dolphins. But, and this is a big but, shout out to Summer Rae, this is heavily dependent on if the Colts defense shows up against the Titans before. I want to swing Thor's hammer down and tell you got to start them up against the Dolphins. At number 4, we got the hot Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. 5% rostered on Yahoo, 4% on NFL, and 7.6% on ESPN. The Atlanta Falcons defense, no bueno. They were not very good up against Baker Mayfield, but they were good enough to get the W 36-30 in a thriller Michael Jackson style up against the Bucs on Thursday Night Football last week. That was a game where the overtime rule being that basically whoever wins the coin flip kind of wins makes it very, very lame, because that could have been a game that just kept on going in overtime. 1 sack, 1 fumble recovery, and 30 points allowed. Definitely not the best spot for the Falcons, though, as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense outside of 1 down game has been an absolute horse and absolute wagon. The Bears defense week 5 going up against the Carolina Panthers. That magic kind of wore off for the Carolina Panthers. Now, the Bears defense is very good, so I'm not going to sit here and give no credit to the Bears defense and just be like, oh, the Carolina Panthers completely fell apart. But Bears defense got 4 sacks, 1 INT, 2 fumble recoveries, and 10 points allowed. Xavier, somebody touched by Leggett, is hurt. May be able to play, may not be able to play. And again, while the Falcons defense isn't the best defense in the NFL, I definitely think they're going to be able to be all over Andy Dalton in this game. They are going up against the Seahawks in week number 7, which does make them a clear-cut candidate. I don't really care if you're like, oh, the Seahawks just lost to the Giants, Nick. I'm not worrying too much about that. I definitely wouldn't want to play the Falcons defense up against the Seahawks, because that's a game in week number 7 that could easily be a repeat of the Bucs versus the Falcons, where it's a super high-scoring back-and-forth affair. Again, not going to sit here and fondle the balls of the Atlanta Falcons defense, but they have some solid players, they have some solid playmakers, and they should be able to sack Mr. Andy Dalton a decent amount. Again, there really does, to me, feel like a clear fall-off after the Eagles and the Texans, but that is what happens when the matchups aren't the best, and that's also what happens when there are 4 teams on bye, especially the cold like Minnesota Vikings that are basically a staple must-start defense every single week. Next defense here, we got the Los Angeles Chargers at the Denver Broncos. The Chargers defense currently rostered in 13% of leagues on Yahoo, 30% on NFL, and 17% on ESPN. But before we break down the Chargers defense some more, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our partner over at Underdog. Underdog is the sponsor of today's video. If you're watching this on Monday when the video comes out, if you sign up with promo code Notorious, you'll receive your free pick, which is Patrick Mahomes tonight up against the New Orleans Saints, higher than half of a total yard. You match that with one of the players on the Saints or one of the players on Thursday Night Football next week or playing on Monday or Sunday next week, and you will receive 3 times your entry fee. If you put in multiple picks, then the payout will be higher. If you're watching this on, say, Tuesday, oh, Mahomes already played. Well, when you type in promo code Notorious or click on the link in the video description, you'll receive a similar pick to Mahomes, higher than half a total yard, but with just one of the players on Thursday. So make sure you check that out. You will also receive a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So again, make sure you sign up using promo code Notorious to get your free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So final defense, like we've been talking about, is the Los Angeles Chargers going up against the Denver Broncos. Again, 13% rostered on Yahoo, 30% on NFL, and 17% on ESPN. The Chargers were on bye week last week, so we got to go back in time, like that Pitbull song that I think was made for one of the Men in Black movies in like the early 2010s. That was a song that I loved back in the day. I've always been a pretty big Pitbull guy. Dale, shout out Wandale Robinson. The Los Angeles Chargers, week 4 up against the Chiefs. They lose 10-17. Shocker, right? But they made the Chiefs offense look relatively pedestrian. Now, the Chiefs offense all year has looked pretty pedestrian, but you know, still, the Chargers defense isn't like a complete and utter pushover. Now, again, I'm not going to sit here and glaze them. I'm not going to sit here and give them the Hawk special, but I do think the Chargers defense is relatively solid. 3 sacks, 1 INT, 1 fumble recovery, and 17 points allowed up against Mahomes back in week number 4. The Las Vegas Raiders defense, week 5 up against the Denver Broncos in Denver. They get spit roasted. They lose 18-34, 3 sacks, and 28 points allowed. But the Raiders defense, you've seen it all season. They are hot and they are cold. There are some games where the Raiders could play up against an offense like the Denver Broncos. You could simulate this game 100 times. Half of the time, they probably look great. They probably have Bo Nix locked up Diddy style. Whereas the other half of the games, they get penetrated. They get raw dogged. And that's what we saw this actual game playing out, right? There's a lot of simulations like your Doctor Strange, and the simulation that we live in, the real life, what actually happened, the Raiders got butt fucked here. They lose 18-34, 3 sacks, 28 points allowed. But again, the Denver Broncos defense is amazing. The Denver Broncos defense looks genuinely like one of the best defenses in the NFL, which is one of the biggest surprises of this season. Off the top of my head, one of the biggest surprises is Mono Man Sam Darnold is surgical out there. Another would be that the Denver Broncos defense is one of the best defenses in the NFL. I'm sure there are some other surprises as well, like the Chiefs really don't look like the Chiefs, or that it's very hard to actually find a bunch of teams in the NFL right now that if you were ranking them, you would say, you know what, I'm very confident in this team going into the playoffs, right? Now, one of those teams for me would be the Chiefs because the Chiefs will just dial in the playoffs with Andy Reid, but there are a lot of question marks around the NFL, and the Broncos offensively is a huge question mark. Some games we've got Big Dick Bo Nix, other games we've got shriveled up cock Bo Nix like he's just got out of a bunch of cold water. So while I, again, don't love any of the skill of these defenses, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like these are the best, most elite defenses in the NFL. It is all about the matchups, and Bo Nix could have a potential disaster class here to help out the Chargers defense in week 7. They face the Arizona Cardinals, and even with the Arizona offense being up and down like a Six Flags ride, I won't be playing the Chargers defense in that game. So now we'll pivot into the honorable mentions. If these defenses are available, for some reason, you might be in a smaller league, or you're in a league mate, or you're in a league with a bunch of Geico cavemen, the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Las Vegas Raiders is a wet dream matchup. Great defense. Now, they are owned in too many leagues to be mentioned in this part of the video. The Steelers defense stood on their head up against the Dallas Cowboys. Sadly, they ultimately lose in what might have been the most boring football game in the NFL that we've seen so far this season, while also being very somewhat like somehow it ended up being like a nail biter and super entertaining at the same time. Maybe you guys don't understand what I'm saying because, you know, the game ended at like 1 a.m. So you guys were fucking knocked out like Khalil Roundtree, or maybe you watched the whole game and you get what I'm saying. And then we got the Chicago Bears versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Another good defense. I think the Steelers defense is better, but they're a severely underrated defense, and they've got a solid matchup up against T-Law and the Jaguars, and the defense has played solid every single game. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you didn't enjoy, make sure you guys do hit that subscribe button down below while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not. Make sure to leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. Make sure you guys do check out Underdog, promo code Notorious, to get that free pick that's on your screen right now, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great guys' day. See you guys later today with the waiver wire video. Have a great one. As always, good boy.